Conversation, the podcast to support your spiritual revolution. I'm your host, Kara Goodwin, and today I'm excited to welcome Neil Gaur from Portal to Ascension. You're going to hear some provocative insights in this episode that will challenge what you think you understand about humanity's past, or at least it really stretched my understandings. We talk about galactic human origins, secret pyramids across the planet, how those pyramids may have used frequency and worked with energy, ancient giant beings as well as those with elongated skulls, and so much more. This episode is jam-packed with mysterious and mind-bending revelations. So if you don't know Neil Gaur, he's the founder of Portal to Ascension, a conscious event production company created in 2008 that hosts a wide range of presenters on a variety of topics such as the origins of humanity, the existence of extraterrestrial life, exposing hidden truths, and exploring the nature of reality. He travels the world facilitating gatherings and filming documentaries that are intended to empower the individual to reclaim their sovereignty and awaken to their full potential. Neil also operates an online platform that creates and facilitates about 110 conferences and workshops a year. Portal to Ascension has worked with over 1,500 researchers, spiritualists, scientists, consciousness explorers, and more. Neil is a philosopher, historian, researcher, and spoken word artist. He presents his research on the ancient wisdom and future science of sound, vibration, and frequency, as well as in-depth explorations into ancient civilizations, archaeological discoveries, space anomalies, shedding light on hidden esoteric wisdom, and exploring ways in which we can create unity and peace on Earth. So before we start, I want to encourage you to join the Sedona Ascension Retreat, March 8th through the 10th, 2024. This retreat features some wonderful guests I've had on the meditation conversations, such as Maureen St. Germain, Michael Jaco, Suzanne Ross, Ruben Langdon, Amanda Romagna, and many more. Just imagine yourself in the mystical energies of sacred Sedona, the perfect backdrop for advancing your spiritual journey. Elevate your consciousness, find inner peace, and embrace transformation in the heart of Sedona for this life-changing experience. Spaces are limited and filling fast, so visit SedonaAscensionRetreat.com to secure your spot. Use code MEDITATION for 10% off your ticket. And now, enjoy this episode. Welcome, Neil. I'm so excited that you're here today.
I'm so excited to be here with you too, Kara. Thank you for having me.
Can we just start by how you got on the path of exploring the true history of humanity and extraterrestrial presence and frequency vibration, all the amazing things that you're investigating?
Yeah, sure. I was blessed, I feel, to really have all of this information like sound, vibration, quantum physics, ancient history, all come at the same time. So when I first entered this world, if you will, it was really holistic, like full spectrum awareness. And I was raised in an Indian family, right? So I like to give that background because my upbringing was very linear, very mathematical, scientific. And even though I didn't do per se too well in school, it was still something that was in the background of my whole life. Actually, math was like the number one class that I did well in, even though I didn't do well in the other classes. And so when I graduated high school, I'd been raised Hindu in Indian family with all this linear information. And I started questioning a lot of things based on my religion, not really questioning my religion per se, but just questioning the fact that I was always told that, I was never told that my religion was the only way. So I was open to all types of faith, all types of traditions my whole life. I celebrated Christmas. Every Christmas, we'd watch like a marathon of Jesus movies and Moses movies and Ben-Hur, and all that stuff was a part of my life. But we watched it, but my parents never ever told me like why we were watching it. It was just a common thing that it was a part of my upbringing. So I started seeing, come 17, 18 years old in 2000, that there were a lot of similarities between these religions, my religion, Christianity, and my religion, Hinduism. And I was wondering because I'd been told most of my life, or at least researched and found out, that pagan religions, polytheistic religions, ones that worship more than one God, completely evolved separately from monotheistic religions. Like they were completely just two sides of the different, basically they're different currency entirely, that they have no connection at all. So if that's the case, how come I'm seeing all these similar stories in Hinduism connected to Christianity? And I started wondering, is there a root of everything? Is there a root of all religion? And that really started my pursuit of trying to figure out the jigsaw puzzle of the pieces together. And Portal to Ascension really is like, it's like a 23-year old project at this point, because I started 23 years ago, of attempting to piece together the pieces of the world and looking further back. And I realized like soon after, a few years after I got into this, that I was really trying to figure out what kind of information, is there a doctrine, is there a dogma, is there a scripture that can just finally show all humanity that we're all interconnected. And so as I was doing that, I found, I went further and further back. I started with the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, and other elements around the world, Native American and North American scriptures. And then I found the Sumerian tablets of creation. Right? And that was like 2001, like 1 year into it. This was the huge milestone where I first found Jordan Maxwell. He was the guy that I basically discovered at first. And he did this whole, like, I don't even know, it might have been like 15-hour long, like multiple part series called The Sons of God. Right. And the Sons of God were the second tier of gods from this planet that was in our solar system called Nibiru. And a lot of people don't know this, but the whole Nibiru Anunnaki story that many people probably have heard of, there actually were two gods there were two different species of humanoid god with the lowercase g on that planet. And one of them was the Igigi. The Igigi were the sons of gods because they were like the demigods. They weren't as interdimensionally powerful. They weren't able to manifest things on that level, but they were still way more powerful than the humans on Earth. The Anunnaki actually didn't come down and interact with the day-to-day life of humanity. The Igigi came down. So they were called the sons of God. And the sons of God later got translated into the Old Testament as the fallen angels. And so I was like, wait a second. So this was like mind-blowing element number one, right? Number two was the Epic of Gilgamesh. In the same scriptures, the Sumerian scriptures, I find a flood story. And there's this hybrid ET, this hybrid humanoid, half like celestial being that was an offspring of the sons of God, right? So now we got the sons of God mating with the daughters of men, creating the Nephilim, also an Old Testament verse, right? A hybrid ET that went around the world after a great flood and discovered Sesudra, who was AKA Noah. And I'm like, wait a second, this is the Noah story in the Sumerian scriptures? A few other elements as well, but I started wondering, either all religion is complete BS because it's based on a sci-fi story from the ancient people talking about beings from the stars, or maybe I have found a source text from a lot of the three Abrahamic religions, at least the ones that have completely taken over the world, if you will, right? And the source text is talking about these beings coming from another planet. That started my search on, is there more evidence to suggest that a lot of these gods and angels that visited us were actually maybe not even higher dimensional, maybe just technologically more advanced extraterrestrials that we saw as gods, right? So that was the ancient history understanding. In the Sumerian scriptures, there were all these metaphors for quantum physics, wormholes, DNA mutation. Whenever you see any ancient scripture and it talks about clay, it says humans were created out of clay. You'll find that almost in every ancient culture, India, Egypt, everywhere, Native American, everywhere. It's actually a scientific metaphor for a genetic mutation of humans. And so I started looking into these things and like finding all the clay stories and going deeper into it. So I was realizing that these ancient people not only were talking about beings from the stars, but they also had a greater understanding of quantum physics, the quantum world. And that started my deep dive journey into this world.
Oh my gosh, where do we go from there? Because there are like 1,000 things I want to talk about based on what you said. So first of all, this other planet in our solar system, I know that there is theorized that there was a planet that exploded, but that's not the name that I'm familiar with. I think it's Maldek, right?
Oh yeah, that's
The
a
one that
different planet.
exploded.
Mm-hmm.
So this wasn't even another planet.
Yeah.
within our solar system. So what happened to that planet? Do you know?
Yeah. Okay. So I have the theories of what could have happened. So have you heard of this story before, by the way?
No. Ha.
Okay. I'll give you the background of it. So basically, there there was the extra planet in our solar system was called Nibiru, like I said, and it had an elliptical orbit around our sun. So here's our sun in the center. Here are all our planets. Okay. And then this planet was going like this. So here we go like this. It's going like this.
Okay, because
Okay.
we're on an
So
ellipse as well, right?
yeah,
But
but
you're
it
showing it more as like a horizontal ellipse, and
yeah. So
this was like a vertical.
yeah, exactly. Say that we were horizontal. It's vertical, right? But the elliptical orbit is like a comet. We stay relatively in the same position. We don't go in front of Mars. We don't go behind Mars. We stay
Oh,
this
right.
distance from Mars. This planet would go all the way further past than the distance of Pluto. Not obviously, it's going on a different elliptical orbit, but it would go further than the distance of Pluto away from the sun, and then it would slingshot between Mars and Earth. So,
What? Oh
yeah,
my
so
goodness!
that
Wow!
was the orbital cycle. It was 3,600 years was the orbital cycle of this planet.
Wow!
And so some of the stories were, I used to say this with full conviction, but now I say it with disclaimers because I after 23 years of being into this, I realized there's a lot of mistranslations and a lot of wishful desiring, if you will. You know what I'm saying? People wanting to
Hmm.
prove something. The whole understanding was that when this planet would get closer to Earth and Mars, these beings would come to Earth and they would send the other tier of gods, which were like the workers. They weren't slaves; they were working together, but they were the ones that would come down, and they were the miners, they were the engineers, things like that, and they would mine gold on Earth. They were mining minerals. The reason for the minerals, and this is almost like the beginning of humans worshiping of gold. Now, just fast forward up 200,000 years of human history, right? Because this happened 300,000 years ago. Fast forward all of that, right? Look at the human's fascination with gold. And what else happened 300,000 years ago? Homo sapiens. That was when we came about, the same time as this story, right? So they would come down to Earth and they would mine the gold. And the reason for that is they would create monatomic gold. They would get the gold into really small particles. And gold has a way of actually repairing the atmosphere of a planet. For example, we're destroying our planet on some level. And if we were to put monatomic gold into our atmosphere, into our ozone layer and stuff like that, it would repair it. So what they would do is they would grind up the monatomic gold and then they would spray it in the atmosphere when they would move further away from the sun and it would insulate the planet to save the heat. Okay.
Mm.
So that was why they were coming down to Earth. And then as that was happening, the Igigi, the other tier of gods, Anunnaki and Igigi, right? Anunnaki translates to those that come from heaven, come to Earth. That's the translation. And
I beg to
Nibiru,
differ about that. No, I'm sure the translation is correct, but I'm not sure that was an accurate assumption of the Anunnaki. But
right?
sorry.
And then Nibiru, the translation of Nibiru in Sumerian is the planet of the crossing, okay? Because it would cross between Mars and Earth. But that's what we probably gave them the name. Who knows what they call themselves?
Right.
And
Yeah.
that gets into the whole Elohim information and creator gods and stuff like that. So basically, after a while of doing this, mining gold, taking them back, the Gigi said, "Hey, you know what? We're really great geneticists. We're great engineers. There's a native population on the Earth, Homo erectus. Why don't we genetically alter this being so that we can actually utilize this being in order to continue doing the work for us?" Right. So that was the first. Now this is also moving into the Old Testament quotes here. This is the quote of "We were created in His image and His likeness" originates from this story. So
Mhm.
the original text said, "We were created in their image and in their likeness." That it was changed to His image and His likeness in Old Testament and in Christianity. So when you look at the original Sumerian scriptures, we were created in their image and their likeness. That was in the story of the Igigi talking to the Anunnaki about hybridizing Homo erectus to create Homo sapien, right? So we were created, seated, and then after a while, I got to give the disclaimers here. Now there's two stories. There's one story that went down. We were a slave race and we revolted, right? And then there's the other story of we weren't ever supposed to be a slave race. They were just utilizing us. We would use a horse to take us from one village to another. And then we became sentient. And then we were left in order to basically continue our evolution. And then there's a third story that they knew that we would eventually become sentient and that they were going to let us just be anyway. We're not too sure which one it is, but basically what happened was we woke up and then we ended up creating this reality. And the Anunnaki supposedly left and went back to their planet, but the Ajiji stayed on the planet. I don't know if they were abandoned or if they chose to stay. And now we have the fallen angel story. Why were they fallen angels? The gods went home. Who stayed on the planet? The fallen angels. What did the fallen angels end up doing? They ended up integrating with humans. What did they do? Mated with the daughters of men. Who came after that? The Nephilim, right? The giants. All these stories comes from that. And it's not far-fetched to believe that these beings could come and actually mate with the daughters of men, because actually, if you look at human history and you look at different Homo hominids, we can interspecies breed. Like, why do they say people in this part of the world have this much Neanderthal, this much? These are all different species because we could interbreed. The reason why we didn't interbreed is because of cultural differences, and language barriers. But maybe over time that actually shifted. These beings were not a different species. There were different species of hominid, but they were able to breed with humans. And as they did, they started creating the offspring, the Nephilim. Now we have the stories of the Greek Titans. We have the stories of the giants all over the world. This all comes
the giants
originally
and those
from
with
text.
the elongated head. I mean, the elongated heads, they're different from giants, right?
And that's the whole, you want to get into that, we can get into that too.
Is that separate?
No, it's connected, and that not too many people have spoke about the connection because it's actually a fairly new discovery on the connection about 5 years ago. Brian Forster, who's the foremost researcher of the elongated skulls in Peru, we've done a lot of events with him. And basically, I'll fast forward to what happened 5 years ago. In Peru, it's hardcore Catholic, and that's where basically 90% of all the elongated skulls are found in the world. And so it's really difficult to ask them to take one of these elongated skulls and do a DNA test. And it was so hard. They tried for like ages. Finally, they I don't know how they got them to say yes, but there was an agreement. And they went ahead, and around 5-6 years ago, they went ahead and did a DNA test on these skulls. First, to prove that they're naturally elongated, because there's this whole cranial deformation thing. So check, number one, they're naturally elongated, right? And then the second thing is they're not Homo sapien. Okay, another check, which isn't too far-fetched to think of, because in the last 300,000 years of Homo sapiens existence, it's already conventionally accepted that we've been on Earth with 7 different hominid species, but we're the ones that won, basically. Okay. This is already accepted. But 300,000 years has been 7 other species. But what's also conventionally said is that there has not been another hominid except for us for 30,000 years. This proves that incorrect, because these skulls are like a few thousand years old, right? And we're Homo sapien, they elongated, and the DNA results show they had red hair. That's the number 3. And number 4 was they did a DNA study on where they originated from. Mesopotamia, Babylon, ancient Sumer. A connection to the Anunnaki. So now, are these the offspring? Probably not the direct offspring, because this is 2, 3, 4,000 years ago. We're talking about 300,000 year story, right? However, these were the descendants of a lineage of people from there, most likely.
And they worked their way to Peru from Mesopotamia.
Yeah, so they went to Paracas, Peru. They probably took ships. I don't know if they were spacecraft or they were regular ships, but they went and they created a colony in Peru thousands of years ago, which is why Peru is honestly the number 1 archaeological mecca in the entire planet. It's so insane. It was like utilized by so many ancient civilizations. So much went down over there. You could there's so many archaeological discoveries in Peru that the government is sick and tired of finding new discoveries, that they don't even cordon them off. They don't ticket them. They don't protect them. Nothing, because there's too many. They can't do it. If it wasn't for foreigners namely Germans, which is a whole other story of why the Germans go around the world finding all these sites, because that's the whole thing going on, is if you look at, so basically Europeans went to Peru over the last 100, 200 years and convinced the government there that they have something that they can monetize. And that's how a lot of these places became archaeological sites you can visit, including the Nazca land.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, wow.
hmm
Wow. Thank you for that. Let's circle back to the Anunnaki planet. Why do we not have this planet now in our solar
Yes.
system?
So here's the two different understandings. So when I first got into this and I was like super into the Anunnaki information in 2012, as you know about 2012, the shift in consciousness and all that, there was a huge component of 2012 that was in alignment with the return of planet Nibiru. That was, I wouldn't say a fringe component of the 2012 people. I would say it was a majority of the 2012 people that were into not just Ascension, because some people were like 2012 Ascension, right? Shift in consciousness. Other people were like 2012 ETs. And the 2012 ETs information was completely in alignment with the Nibiru awareness of that was the 3,600 year cycle ending for Nibiru to show up in the stars again. So many people, many famous speakers that I've worked with, were waiting for this to come. There was all types of information on the internet. Is that a second star in the sky? Where is this? Is this a second planet? There was actual videos of an actual planet that could have been CGI. Who knows, right? So a lot of people were waiting for it to come. And after 2012, the more people that were waiting for it to come, I think that's coming dissipated, right? And that goes into more, a lot of people were waiting for something before 2012. Now more people are working on themselves, I feel, and try to be more present in the moment rather than waiting for something to happen later. That was a huge shift in please save us to let's save ourselves.
Mm.
So as that, as we, so now some people still feel that the planet's going to come back, but not too many. And the reasons why is that there's a couple different theories. One is that the planet was destroyed, right? And another one is that it was actually, because our solar system is actually a binary star system. Our sun is rotating around a black dwarf.
No kidding.
Is it called black dwarf or red dwarf? I forgot the name, but I think it's a red dwarf. But there's a, basically you can't see it because it's so dark. But there's a gravitational pull in our solar system that's an anomaly, and our sun is actually rotating around another star, right? And so there's a couple of theories now within that, right? So there's theories within theories because no one really knows. So either it got destroyed, right? Either it's still coming around, which I don't feel is going to happen. And then the other one is that it was actually a planet rotating around the other sun. And then the third theory is that other sun is actually a stargate into a realm in which that planet exists.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And I would say that
Because,
there's enough information out there to look at all of them equally.
yeah. So when I think of the Anunnaki, I think of there was a lot of control, and that's what I have always heard. But it sounds like there was a faction where they were thinking that the Anunnaki would come and save us.
Yeah. So they're not to save us per se. They were thinking that they were going to come back and maybe come and try to mine gold again or exert control again, actually. There was a faction that believed that. Now,
I see.
but then there are Anunnaki people that believe that they were good. So it runs the gamut, really. And so when the Anunnaki come, so when the Anunnaki story actually occurred, there's actually information there with Enlil and Enki, the two brothers that were opposing each other because one of them didn't want to actually create control and exert the control over humanity. So even within the Anunnaki, none of them were just all one way. There was polarity even within that. So to blanket statement all these beings as being a specific way probably isn't the right way to look at it. Right? Some people think that the Anunnaki were actually, they were just, one of them had a less dystopian view of what to do with humanity than the other one, that they were all negative, right? But then the other ones believe that one of them actually was trying to be benevolent and help us out. it seems like what I'm getting to awareness of lately is that I don't know if it was just specifically the Anunnaki or if there were more ET races around 300,000 years ago on the planet, or if there were all Anunnaki, but different factions of the Anunnaki, or it was the Elohim and the Anunnaki was one group of ETs within the Elohim. Because it seems that the earth was sectioned off for different hybridizations to occur. And these different hybridizations occurred with the same natural specimen of earth, our ancestors, with different ETs, which is why we have such variation on earth right now when it comes to race.
Oh, interesting. Then how would like Lemuria and Atlantis kind of play into that picture?
Yeah. So and that's something I've also thought of as well. Is a lot of these stories overlap, right? So when the Anunnaki left, something I'm still curious about is we have these cycles of time. We have these 26,000 year cycles, 25,000 years or so, and it's called the Great Year. And a lot of ancient cultures talk about it, including the Maya. And this Great Year, the cycle, is the precession of the equinoxes, right? It's also connected to the tilt of the Earth's axis. It's also the distance from Earth to the center of our solar system, to the black hole. And it seems to be connected to the evolution and devolution of consciousness. That we go through a 13,000 year evolution, 13,000 year devolution of consciousness. It's a construct or a matrix that we've fallen into. And within this, we have this evolution where we have a remembrance of who we are. We tap into our abilities, chakras come aligned, old gifts come aligned, and then we forget. And then we go through the whole thing all over again, right? And so I jokingly say it's like the definition of insanity, or like going through these experiences over and over. And so whether this cycle started before the Anunnaki and had been going on for a long, long time, or this cycle was a product of the aftermath of the Anunnaki experience, I'm not sure. But what seemed to occur at one point is that we were positioned in our solar system, in our galaxy, in relation to the black hole in the center of our galaxy, in relation to other planets even, in order to create specific experiences on Earth that operate in a pattern-like state, right? That every 13,000 years, this will happen. Every 13,000 years, this will happen. In between, you'll have these experiences. The energy of the solar system, when Earth is positioned below the galactic disk, will bombard them with this frequency, and this frequency will help them forget everything that they just remembered. It's almost like the perfect piece on a game board. And if you have the perspective of the person looking at the game board, you know exactly what's going to happen when. But if you're on it, all you see is straight in front of you, and you're like, remembering, forgetting, remembering, forgetting. So it seems like that's what's going on. And the case in point on that one, to bring in some physics here, physics.org, they did this whole entire look on their precession of the equinoxes and flood cycles on Earth. And their conclusion was that Earth, this is their own words, Earth is adhering to some sort of cosmic pattern that is attracting cataclysms. Just think of what that means. Adhering to a pattern, some sort of cosmic pattern that we're going through, we're positioned perfectly, and we're attracting, not we're falling into it. We are attracting cataclysms in a pattern-like state that's creating resets on Earth over and over and over again, having us to remember. So now the Atlantis question. So as we go through, we now set up the whole pattern that's going on within our galaxy. As we go through these rises and shifts in consciousness, we've had complete evolutions of consciousness where we've become great civilizations, including Atlantis, including Lemuria. And a lot of times when these civilizations become so advanced spiritually, it's not always technologically, because sometimes when you're at a huge level of higher development consciousness, you might not need a computer. You might not need anything. You might just want to be in nature. So some civilizations were like that. Some of them had technology. The Lemurian one, even though they had higher technology, they were more nature-based. So they didn't need as much spacefaring civilization like Atlantis did. So then we get to civilizations that become so advanced and so aware of the cosmic patterns that they create technology to try to break free from the cosmic patterns. Right? And they either ascend out of the pattern of this Earth into a different form of Earth, or they maintain their civilization while Earth goes in and out of in cycles because they have some sort of technology, some sort of force field stopping them from falling until
and then
until they get
maybe
to a
we're
point where they
not
can.
perceiving them. Sorry.
That's true. Yeah. Maybe we're not perceiving them because they phase out of reality. That's for sure with inner Earth beings and things like that. But then also, some of them are on Earth, but they have the force field around them, and they survive multiple cycles because the frequencies around them cannot penetrate their force field. However, it seems like at some point Atlantis, I feel, was actually transcended off the cycles. They'd break them through free from them because it existed for way longer than a couple of thousand years. But then at one point, something happened in Atlantis where it actually fell victim to the cycles of time. And now we have a biblical reference again. We have the fall from grace. Humanity, the fall from grace is actually repeated over and over and over again because we going through these cycles, we rise in consciousness, we fall from consciousness. So the last fall from grace, I would say, would be Atlantis.
Right. And so from your research, do you think that Atlantis had a huge cataclysm that happened, or do you, because it sounded like you were saying it actually existed a lot longer than we think it did? For people who even think it existed, I guess we can make that caveat since it's not really technically accepted in the mainstream that it was ever a real place.
Right. Yeah, there was definitely a global pyramid culture. There's enough information out there to show that there was advanced pyramids around the world. India, China's been hiding them, but they can't really, they have to admit that they exist. They just don't let people go and see them. And they've created beautiful botanical gardens on top of these pyramids just so people won't go into them. But you can see them on Google Maps. Antarctica. So there's all these pyramids. A lot of them, I feel, were in existence around 13,000 years ago. So now if Atlantis fell during the end of the last ice age, known as the Younger Dryas period, when there was something happened on Earth, those other cataclysms, but the major cataclysm that occurred, some people say it's a solar flare, some people say it's a comet. Robert Schoch, he was the guy who redated the Sphinx and worked with a lot. He says it was a solar flare, but most other people say it's a comet. I'm thinking what happened was it was actually both. Because there was two cataclysms. There was one around 13,000 years ago, and then there was craziness and chaos of floods and all types of stuff on the planet for 1,000 years. Things started calming down, and then a few hundred years later, there was a solar flare, and all this stuff went down all over again. There was another great flood. There's, a huge shift that happened on the planet. So Atlantis, from all the people that I've worked with, 'cause we did a 2-day conference on Atlantis, 22 hours of information on it. And so I learned a lot. And it seems that there was 3 cataclysms that brought down Atlantis. So it didn't just go down in one go. And these people on their civilization knew that it was going to go down. They knew that it was going to happen. Whether some people stayed with the ship or not, I don't know. But so it wasn't just, oh my God, all of a sudden the comet, Atlantis gone down. A lot of them had actually already started going around the world creating colonies, including in the Mayan Peninsula, including in where I'm at right now, and then including in Egypt. Yeah, exactly. Egypt actually could have actually been lasted longer, and Egypt could have actually been a part of Atlantis and maybe they just moved there. Because I just spent a month in Egypt, and there's some structures there like 100,000 years old. It's really, really, really ancient. So maybe they went through cycles of time. Maybe the different civilizations that went there at different moments. And maybe right now we're watching, when we look at these structures, we're actually seeing structures from different epochs of humanity. So to go back to your question, yeah, I feel Atlantis fell in 3 cataclysms. It wasn't a huge experience where everybody just died. And a lot of the descendants went off and started creating different colonies. Now in Atlantis, we were in the Satya Yuga, known as the Truth Age, the Golden Age, right? And that was 30,000 years ago. So a cataclysm occurred at that age, making it that a lot of humanity had to reset. A lot of technology had been lost, but the humanity's consciousness was still at a higher rate. However, we were now going in the downturn, heading towards where we are now. So as we started falling and falling from grace, a lot of these stories of our ancient past became myths, like flood stories and things like that. And we started creating technology in order to maintain the frequency of the planet because we didn't want to lose it. We didn't want to lose the vibration we're at. Now we see the introduction of all types of pyramid structures. We see the introduction of the Ankh, all these technologies that were trying to mimic things that we should have been able to do with our own consciousness and own being. But because of this cataclysm, because of the fall from grace, we were losing the ability to do it. So I feel Egypt after 30,000 BC was really an attempt to create another grid-like structure to make sure that the frequency of the planet would stay and people could stay at a higher vibration, right? And then something happened where they overpowered and they couldn't sustain themselves anymore. And a lot of the pyramids have inner explosions, like the Red Pyramid in Egypt. It exploded from within. Nothing outside. There's huge fire marks inside of it. It seems like it was an energy generating device. It was creating some sort of energy current, and then there was an explosion, and then they went offline.
Wow. So let's talk about pyramids and frequency, and also I'd love to talk a little bit about the pyramids across the planet, specifically in North America, beyond Mexico, where we know there are a lot of pyramids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the pyramids. Well, it seems that there was some sort of awareness, as I just shared, that we were falling from grace, right? Another time falling from grace. And a lot of these structures were created in specific areas in the world that there is a natural energetic current going through it. Some people call it the ley lines, some people call it the meridians. And it's not even, just an esoteric new age component to consider ley lines. Even, conventional scientists show that there's actually energetic currents going through. Right? When it comes to the pyramids in Egypt, it's on the 33rd parallel, which is also an interesting connection to the 33-degree Masons. And if you look at the 33-degree parallel across the world, there's all these structures on that same area. So my belief is that as we were falling from grace this last time, some of these structures could go back even further for different times, that these structures were created in specific areas to naturally connect into the frequency of the planet in order to amplify this frequency to be utilized for some sort of thing. And it could have been, I don't think it was utilized just for one thing. I think it was also potentially one of the elements would be to ensure that the planet would be at a harmonic vibration. Right? And I'd shared as well before in the previous shows and that I've done about the hierarchy element, right? It's not about whether it's a higher frequency or lower frequency. It's about a harmonic frequency and disharmonic frequency. What happens to Earth as we fall from grace is we fall into disharmony. So I feel that a lot of these tools and technology and pyramids were created in order to cultivate harmony on the planet. And some of them were used as energy generating devices. Like being in Egypt for a month in last September, it seems like that it was created almost like a power grid, that there was electrical currents going through these other types of underground structures that they created, transferring energy from one thing to another. And the Saqqara complex seemed to be maybe a storehouse, a battery, a house where they would store all of this electricity and energy. And what do they use it for? Do they use it for communication? Do they use it for lighting up, actual electricity? Do they use it for their own spiritual upliftment? Do they utilize it for the whole earth? Those are the different beliefs. There is one area in Egypt too where the pyramid was actually, I forget the name of it now, but it's a derivative of selenite, and it's a type of material, crystal material that is utilized for that we use now for long distance communication. And the whole pyramid was covered in it. So the Saqqara pyramid was collecting energy, and then through some sort of funnel was sending sending this electricity to this pyramid that was coated with this crystal-like substance for communication. I don't know, you can speculate, but I got a feeling that they were clocking in information and sending it back to the stars, like talking to the beings that they were connected to, reporting to them what was happening, and back both information like a galactic telephone.
Wow. So we know that you mentioned that there are pyramids in China that are not accessible by the public or even known by the public. What about in the United States?
Yeah. That was something that I was really curious about when I started finding pyramids in Mexico and South America. Why is it? Why is it that almost at the border, I know you've heard this before, so for the audience here, why is it at the border of Mexico, we start seeing all these advanced structures, but as soon as we get to North America, I guess, when the European version of it, North Europeans, we don't see that anymore. Well, if you look far back enough, you'll see that there were actually pyramids in North America. One of them being, I forgot the name of the civilization, but it was in Iowa, and you can hear the first testaments of the actual people from England that came and discovered it, explaining the whole area and how advanced the pyramids are. You go there now, there's nothing, just a few mouths.
So would those be
roundabout.
the Native Americans, you mean, who were in Iowa
Yeah.
before the
Yeah.
settlers? Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, there's been some accounts. I've only read a couple of them because I haven't done a deep enough dive just on this topic. But there's definitely been accounts of settlers coming in and seeing very advanced civilizations, very advanced structures, but we don't see them anymore. And there's also in this is some people think it's a conspiracy theory, but it's a conspiracy fact that in the Grand Canyon they were finding all types of things. Right? Have you heard about these stories
Only
from the
from
Grand Canyon?
you. Yeah, but it's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, like long story short, explorer in the Grand Canyon comes across this cave, goes into this cave, deep into one of the mountains there, finds all these mummies, um, Egyptian statues, structures, everything in there. Goes and tries to convince people to come with him. Comes, brings the Smithsonian, brings all these archaeologists in there. They go in there, they take a bunch of stuff out, do a whole bunch of research, and then they close off that section. And you can go there now, still to that area, and they actually have warnings that you're not allowed to go there. And when you go through the area that they say not to go past, you'll see helicopters and people patrolling and things like that. That's an extremely short version of the story. If you want to look more into it, there's this guy on YouTube he goes by Y-Files, and he did a whole 1 hour special on the diary of the guy and the day-to-day activities that occurred when they were there, what kind of things they found. So, there's been a lot of advancements, a lot of amazing things that have happened in North America, much bolder than what we've been told. And one of the reasons originally for them attempting to wipe away the older past of North America was because they wanted to create a disconnect between the new settlers and the older people there, that it kind of like this land was discovered by us, right? Rather than the advanced history that happened, and really trying to make people not be aware of the atrocities that were created, that happened in North America, right? Like in my same presentation that I spoke about this, I have a list of like 300 tribes that no one even remembers their names anymore, right? Lost civilizations. We call them North American Indigenous people. There was like 4, 5, 600 or more individual civilizations all existing up here, right? And now we just like put them all together in a blanket statement. It's no different than calling a Frenchman an Englishman. You know what I'm saying? When you get to that point, I mean, oh yeah, you got similar ancestry. Actually, they probably have more similar ancestry than the people that were here, because of all the different things that were occurring. So why is it that in North America and Central and South, we see something different? It's so interesting too, because think of it, who populated South America, South Europe? Who populated North America, North Europe? The archetypes of what's going on there is very metaphoric. And when the Northern Europeans came into to the Americas, they had a superiority complex. Like, yo, we are the best. This is what it should look like. Everything else is disgusting. We don't even want to mix with that, right? So what did they do? They attempted to get rid of them as much as possible. They wanted to destroy any advancements to show that there could have been more superior civilizations here. They didn't want to mate with them and mix with them, right? A good example is that they created reservations even up until this day, right? They like kept pushing them away to little areas for them to go and be in. But the Southern Europeans had a different mentality. They were like, their conquering mentality was by raping and pillaging. They were like, you are lesser than, therefore I can do whatever I want with your body, you know? And so they came and they created a mixed race, right? When you look at people in North America today, north of Mexico, Irish, German, English ancestry, right? Most people that have come from way back when. Look in South America, it's a whole new race, right? They all got traded like 300 years ago. It's whole civilization. So it's mixing. So as that occurred, they started, they were actually intrigued by the ancient cultures. A lot of them didn't think that they were lesser than, the Spanish, the Italians, the Portuguese didn't seem to think that they were lesser than by seeing these advanced structures, right? They did destroy the text and the scriptures to disconnect them from their own past, right? They did take their children from them and then put them into other families in order to mess up with the lineage and bloodline, right? That kind of stuff. But they mixed with them. And as they mixed with them, the new children that populated the whole area had ancestry that was indigenous, right? And there we start seeing the preservation of their structures.
Wow. And then you can take a whole other, talk about DNA and how that all plays into it and what we access through our DNA. Maybe you'll have to come back and we can go down that route if you want to.
I'd love to.
I know we're getting toward the end of our time, and I would love for you to point people toward how they can find out more and connect with you and your work with Portal to Ascension and so forth.
Sure. So the best Portal to Ascension, for those of you who don't know, I've been creating events since 2008. And at this point, we create quite a lot of events a year, 70, sometimes up to 90 events a year, online, in-person, retreats, tours, conferences. So the best way to really just see what we're doing is portaltoascension.org. You can sign up there. And we have, we've created over 10,000 hours of presentations. So once you sign up, you get access to our website, which has 3,000 hours of that content is for free. So you can navigate, sort by category, search by speaker, right? So all that's there. And then our youtube.com/portal-to-ascension, Instagram @portal-to-ascension. And this year, we have a lot of, amazing events coming up. Actually, we're doing a 2-day conference on Lemuria. That's going to be in July. Yeah. First ever deep dive like that on Lemuria. And then we have a conference in Glastonbury, a second annual conference in the UK. So that's Portal to Ascension Glastonbury, ascensionglastonbury.com. And then we're going to do a cruise at the end of the year from Orlando to Honduras to Belize to the Yucatan. And it's called the Galactic Origins Cruise. So it's a whole 7 days of like galactic heritage. So we got a lot of cool things coming up this year.
That's fantastic. And if there is anybody listening who has not yet checked out Portal to Ascension, I can testify it's an amazing resource. So do go and check it out. Well, Neil, this has just been so much fun and so expansive. I'm so grateful that you came on today. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.